trying to play this video, but data is not working with me, so Wi-Fi is not working. Okay, I the Wi-Fi here is not working. My data will not load it. So if you'd like to see the video in your own time, you can go to our YouTube channel, Jamaicans for Justice. The video is called Victims' Voices Lost in Lockup. Hold on, wait, it's a static man come back. Let's try again. Okay, I spoke. So yes, so Victims' Voices Lost in Lockup, and you'll be able to watch the video. This gentleman was one of our clients who we would have assisted to get redress, but we held him a lockup where he describes the conditions of it. He lost sight in one of his eyes because of it. Yeah, he lost sight in one of his eyes because of the bacteria that was there and so on. So he talks a bit about the conditions and how it would have affected him. So you can check that out. That's Victims' Voices Lost in Lockup. And we have a whole series of victims' voices that speaks to different issues of persons who have been affected by the state. Right? So we will leave that there. All right. So the next thing is that we should do activity, but I think we need to have lunch before we do the activity. Lunch is not here yet, but it should be here for 1. So, I'm sorry. So what we're gonna do? No, we don't have to activity not gonna take 20 minutes. How much people in here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's not gonna take 20 minutes. So we will break now. Whenever the lunch comes, we will consume it. We will come back at 1:40. Right? So it's 12:40 now. We will come back at 1:40 where we will continue. So if we are still eating, we will have a working lunch. Right? And we will just continue until the end of the agenda. So we break now, 1:40, we'll be back.
For those of you who have not renewed your subscription with us, I brought the registration forms, and the treasurer is here, so the treasurer can give you the information regarding the financial aspects. And those of you online too, greetings. You know, so the banking details. It's very important that we remain not just floating, but we're able to navigate the rough waters and stay way above float, right? To date, we have almost 300 members of the LMAJ. But the unfortunate thing is that we only have about approximately 80 persons who are paid up members, right? Well, that was before Melissa. That was before Melissa, right? So we're encouraging persons, if you have not yet done your fiduciary responsibility, if you have not yet given your subscription, we are asking you to do so, right? So we have some registration forms, and you can contact us, whether your zone leaders or directly to us at the LMAJ. My numbers are in the groups, and we will advise you how to deal with that part of things, right? So we look forward to hearing from you soon. That's one. Two, we know that Melissa has done a lot, and Melissa keeps working on the mines. And I'm happy that we have members who are trained psychosocial personnel, and they will give us that support. Yes, Donna? Yes, yes. All right. All right. Well, the good thing about it is again, please come out and let us meet and have a good time. The good time that we're having, May 20th, write it down in the diary. Mark your calendars. May 20. It's a Lime meeting. We would have had something last November. This one is Melissa caused it. If it weren't for Melissa, we would have had the first Lime. All right, out by yes, the Lime meeting. We were the quarterly meeting. We're coming office building. Yes, the Van East building. So there's there's up games because we want to do some socialization before we get back down in the business. Right? May 20. Yes. Yeah, the Van Old Tax Office. your dues. If you have not paid your dues, walk with the dues. Walk with a little contribution. Yes, if you have it to the bill color, the treasurer is here. Yes. And those of you online too, if you want to, we can give you information. The treasurer is here. Right.
Members of different schools, different schools. Something is posted in school and you read it, see the response. Right. It helps us to work out. When you have a group of 30 persons,
Thanks for that reminder, Donna. All right. Please respond to the messages in the groups. All right. Know your group leaders, your zone leaders, and share. We're in the process of getting pins for the LMAJs. Those of you who don't have your blazers either, right? We're looking at getting the same person who built the blazers from the same tailor. I think he had some material. So we're looking at we're going to be getting the cost to let you know. So it's Philip, he's on Church Street, right? So we purchase the material, he builds the blazer and you pay, right? So there are a few things that we're trying to get back for you. So the pins, that's one. The shirts, we're trying to do some other little fundraisers that you can also participate in. Because we need the funds, ladies and gentlemen. We have, all right. All right. There's a little thing, there's a hold on that. There's some discussion taking place on that. So I will let you know. In a few weeks' time, you know, we participate in the national essay competition. Last year, our parish was the national winner came from St. James. All right, the national winner came from yes. And gentlemen, God can sing, you know.
might not be able to. Right. I like you. I like you. But it takes everybody.
Right, so if you have an interest in being a member of the choir, though that you are online, please reach out to us, right? We look forward to building this choir. It's one of the, well, it's the only choir within the LMAJs. Rebuilding, yes, and continue to strengthen it. All right. See that? Original choir members, Donna, these three ladies. Yes, right. Yeah. All right, the other thing, my final thing before I take my leave right now is we want to do a fundraiser, ladies and gentlemen. We want to do a fundraiser in August because you know that we need funds to do the projects that we participate in. And so ladies, JPs, so when the tickets we're thinking of doing a gospel concert in August. So when the tickets are made available, we're asking that each JP take at least 10. JPs now, all JPs. Right? Because we're not just looking for lay magistrate members. We're looking for all JPs to participate because we're all doing the same work, right? Ensuring that we serve the people. That's first and foremost. We're online, all right? Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're all JPs first and foremost. We are commissioned to serve in our respective areas, but we give support to as many projects that we possibly can, right? Earlier today, I went across to CIBC. We got a letter from a friend from Sam Sharp, and I reached out to some friends. One of them works at CIBC, and we're able to give some support to the young man. Right? I just called the person just this week, and the letter came in, I think, Tuesday, and I spoke to the person about it, and we're able to pay, well, through this intervention, they're able to pay down a great portion. It's about 75% of what was outstanding for him, right? So we do our things in our respective areas, but it's all about service. All right, so we look forward to seeing you more. We look forward to your involvement more. We look forward to hearing of the good things. All right, thank you very much.
Right, so we are going to start back. If your colleagues had not abandoned you, some of them,
then we would have done the activity, but some of them have abandoned you, so there's too little of you to do it. Right? What the activity would have been is that I would have labeled you all with labels that are kinds of people in the society, and you would have spoken to each other like an ordinary Jamaican would speak to that person, and then we would discuss what was said. Right? So, but there's too little of you to do it. So we will go on to our actual presentation. So the last two things, well, would have discussed three things in the end. We would have discussed persons living with HIV, children in conflict with law, women, and persons experiencing gender-based and domestic violence, right? In terms of persons living with HIV, has anyone in here been sensitized on HIV before? Yes. How is HIV transmitted? Sexual intercourse and how else? Bodily fluids, right? Blood transfusion, bodily fluids, right? Okay, can you get HIV from someone's spit? Spit. From shaking hands with them? Retroviral medication on the regimen that you're supposed to take it, and eventually your HIV viral load will be so low that you cannot transmit HIV and it cannot be detected when you are tested for it, right? And that also means that if you are a woman and you would like to become pregnant, once you are undetectable and untransmittable, you can become pregnant and your child will not have HIV. And in fact, we have eliminated in this country mother to child transmission of HIV. So we have not had any recent children born with HIV. Yes. Yes, through natural birth, right? So once you are, yes, it is. So once it is that you are on that medication and you stick to the medication, then you can do things like that. You have a natural birth and your child will not have HIV. Yes. So that is good things for us to tell our constituents, right? So if they come with that, because sometimes even though we have this information, not everybody knows. I remember when I was a kid, we used to see HIV related ads on the TV constantly. I can't say that I see that anymore, right? So the information is there, but not everybody knows. So when people become infected with HIV, they may still experience a level of distress, right? Because they don't know that it is not a death sentence anymore, right? And it is so much not a death sentence that you could be living such a healthy life on your ARVs, right? But one of the things that keep people off of their ARVs is the potential for discrimination, right? Because if people find out you have HIV, then they're going to be treating you differently. And so part of the way that we can help to ensure that our society is at a stage where HIV transmission is no longer a challenge, that we are weeding it out, is that we would have to start approaching these persons in a basis of non-discrimination, right? Non-discrimination. And we've made some steps towards that. So, for example, in previous years, you would have needed to get, for example, an HIV test to get a food handler's permit. You don't need that anymore. Or you would have needed to get an HIV test as part of the battery of tests you get when you go to the hospital. That is not necessary anymore because we're destigmatizing HIV, right? And we know that it is not this bullet-like virus that's just going to come out and catch you. Right? And as we do that, we ensure that persons are more likely to come to treatment and to stay on treatment, right? Another thing is that we have developed two technologies, medical technologies that also respond to HIV. That is PrEP and PEP. Have you heard of those things before? PrEP and PEP, they're acronyms, right? The PrEP stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis, and the PEP stands for post-exposure prophylaxis. PrEP is usually taken by persons who are likely to be exposed to HIV. So that could be a healthcare worker, that could be somebody that's in a relationship with a person that's living with HIV, that could be someone who is promiscuous and have multiple partners what they're having unprotected sex with. All of those persons are good candidates for PrEP. What PrEP does is prevents you from becoming infected with HIV by giving you, just like a vaccine would work, antibodies that would respond to the HIV should it enter your system, right? So you would not become infected with HIV. Of course, none of these are foolproof methods, right? Like all medication, nothing is 100%, but it is an improvement in the levels of protection that we would have had. So in addition to your protected sex where you're using your condom, you can also be a person that takes PrEP, right? Say, for example, you are the husband of a woman who is living with HIV. If you want her to become pregnant, you must have unprotected sex, right? And she, if she's going to become pregnant, would be a woman that is at her undetectable stage, because you would not impregnate a woman that is detectable, right? Because she would pass the HIV on to the child. So when she's at that undetectable stage, you would want to have unprotected sex with her. And as much as that is untransmittable, when it is undetectable, you would want that extra layer of protection, right? And you take your PrEP to ensure that when you do have sex with her that is unprotected, you can rest assured that you will not have HIV 3 months down the line, right? Similarly with PEP, if you are exposed to HIV, so this is post-exposure now, so you have been exposed to HIV, you can take PEP to respond to that exposure. It must be taken within a specific period of time. I think the period is 72 hours, but it could be shorter than that. I'm not particularly sure, right? But you take that in order to, I'm correct? So you take that in order to arrest your possible infection, right? So those technologies now exist that we can use to keep ourselves safe from HIV, right? All right. So we're going to talk now about children in conflict with the law. When we talk about children in conflict with the law, we focus on our child diversion program. Why we focus on it? It's because as lay magistrates, you would be considered a party that can refer a child to child diversion if the child comes in conflict with the law, right? Now, what it is, it's a program that we would take that child that has a prima facie case against them. So they're not necessarily charged, but there is enough evidence to charge them, or they have been charged, or they're at any other stage in their criminal justice process. And we take that child out of the criminal justice process and we put them in a rehabilitative program. Now, we've had this child diversion program since 2020, meaning it's been in place and operating since 2020, but the legislation, we have had that since 2018, but it would have taken some time for us to create the systems and the programs that would support the legislation, right? So we've had it in place since 2020. It's administered by your Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. Their name just changed last year. So Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs. And they monitor the child diversion offices. So under the Act, we have the Child Diversion Office and we have the Child Diversion Committees. The Child Diversion Offices are, or officers, depending on which parish you're in, is where you would make your initial point of contact if you are making a referral, right? So your child diversion office have your officers and they would take your initial intake form and they would ensure that that goes to the committee. And if there are aspects of the intake that need to get done, then they would deal with that. They also provide advice because they are monitoring the program as it is being administered. So they would advise the ministry about ways to improve the program, things to change in it, and so on. General policy and legislative advice to do with that. As I said, they would have the conduct of the program. The Child Diversion Committee is a part of the program, but not necessarily in the office, because the committee is in each parish. They'll have a committee and it will have several members. If you look in the schedule of the Child Diversion Act, you'll see the kinds of members that it can have, but it would include persons like psychologists and school administrators and police officers and social workers and all the kinds of persons that can address behavioral issues and assess behavioral issues in children. They will look at the child's file, and then the Child Diversion Committee would be the one that determines what will make up a child's diversion program. Each child gets a specific program that is designed for that child and the specific offense that they committed and the circumstances under which they committed that offense. So when they're doing these assessments, they would also look at the family life. They would look at how the child is doing in school. They would look at all aspects of the child's life that could possibly have led the child to come in conflict with law, and then see how best the program can address that. Right? Now, for a child to be eligible for the child diversion program, it needs to be the child's first offense. If it is not their first offense, they must have already done diversion, and they must have completed it successfully, and they must not have re-offended for 3 years. Right? So if it is not your first offense, then you already did a diversion program, you finished it successfully, and it has been 3 years since you re-offended, then you are eligible again. You are only eligible between the ages of 12 and 17. 12 is the age of criminal responsibility. 17 is the last age before you are an adult. And it's child diversion, right? So you would have to fall within that age range. You can only be eligible for diversion up to 3 times. But if we do the math, you will not get to the 3 times, because by you wait the 3 years, your time will have run out on the second time, right? So more than likely, you would have had 2 maximum opportunities to go through diversion. When we looked at the data, we had not seen any cases where the child had gone through diversion more than once, that it was the same child that went through the diversion more than once. We haven't seen any of those cases yet. But again, we've only had the program since 2020, so that might change over time, right? Now, in making the referrals can be made by 2 parties, the police and the court, any level of the court, right? Also, when it comes to the police, the police and the court, when it comes to the prosecution, say your clerk of court or your DPP, currently they cannot refer, but that place them on diversion currently, but they can say to the court, it is our opinion that this child or it is the circumstance I said before. 3 years, no reoffending, right? So the prima facie case court. If I go to court and the judge says, are you guilty or not guilty? I am saying something that is going to go on the record, and the judge will make a decision based on what I said, right? When I am being offered diversion and they say, do you accept responsibility? the diversion. And then that becomes an issue now because there has been a plea entered, but you have brought the child through the diversion program. So how could the two things exist at the same time? Exactly. Now, our opinion to the Joint Select Committee is that the legislation is not ambiguous, but they need to clarify with the judiciary what their intention was with that section. The Chief Justice said that they were interpreting the legislation as it is written. As someone who can also interpret legislation, even though I'm not a judge, I am an attorney that was taught to interpret legislation. The legislation does not say that. It is very, very clear that there should be no plea entered, right? But since there is so much confusion, the Joint Select Committee has basically already accepted that they are going to change the legislation so that it is absolutely clear that there will be no plea involved in this process. I don't know how else they can make it clear other than how it is now, but that's an issue for the drafters to consider, right? But they have highlighted, it has been in the news, and there was a little bit of back and forth between the Justice Minister and the Chief Justice about it, right? But yeah. All right, so another element is that the victim that is involved in the offense has to consent, right? And part of the reason that this happens is that there was still a crime committed. And as much as we would like to work in the best interest of the rehabilitated, that cannot be at the expense or completely at the expense of the redress that a victim may be expected to receive, right? So they would is given the diversion. The court can always supersede if the victim did not consent, right? Because they will look at the reasonableness of the lack of consent or the refusal to consent. And if it is unreasonable and not in the best interest of the child, they will make a decision outside of the victim's wishes, right? Because that would be in the best interest of the child, right? Sorry? Is that a question? No? Okay. All right. The child also consents to participating in the program, right? Because at the end of the day, as much as the parent might want you to consent, and the lawyer want you to consent, and the judge want you to consent, and your girlfriend who you did have sex with forget charged with sex under the age of 16 want you to consent. If you do not want to do the child diversion, there's nothing that anyone can do, right? And so if the child does not consent and sign off on this, it is pointless. But you can also see how it would be pointless, because if you're trying to rehabilitate someone and they're not interested in being rehabilitated, it will not work, right? So all of that is necessary for us to get to the diversion. Now, when a child diversion program so when the child diversion program is being created, as we said, the child diversion committee would review this child's file. They will do an assessment, and that assessment have several parts to it. So psychologists might come and talk to you and do an assessment. They will give you some sheets, some forms that you will fill out and figure out your aptitude for academics, your intelligence, whether you have any disabilities. All of those things will be assessed. Once they have assessed those things, then they would look now towards putting the plan together. The plan can have multiple of these options or other things that are not listed here, right? So say, for example, the child damaged some school property, right? And the school has brought them to court over the damage. Maybe having decided to assess the child, place them on the diversion program, they say, okay, the school want an apology because them destroy the property that was there. The school also want restitution to buy back the things into the community gang. So we are going to order that he refrains from associating with these people, and that is a part of his diversion program. And we can add and remove and add and remove to ensure that the child is getting the intervention that they need, right? Now the program, the length of it, case by case basis, right? So you can be on a program for 3 months, you can be on a program for 9 months, you can be on a program for a year, and especially where it is that the court has remit of it, it can take a bit longer because the court will be calling you back to your court date to look into how the progress is going and if you are complying with the things that the office say you are to do and so on, right? And they will advise the court each time, okay, having looked at this, we need another 2 months with this child to go through counseling, or we need, or the order that was given was a vocational order. So they sent the child to heart, right? And the heart program is going to take 1.5 years. So we have to wait for 1.5 years and you finish your program, and then we would see that all is well, right? Now, a lot of these things, the Ministry of Justice supports them. So they have MOUs with like the National Drug Abuse Counseling Center, and yes, so they have that an MOU with them. So where it is that it's a drug related, you know, the child starts smoke marijuana or whatever, and that is influencing the behavior, they refer them there. They have the Women's Outreach and Resource Center, that's a part of it. They have a MOU with Heart as well. And as far as I know, they're developing other MOUs with other agents. Hopefully, we would see some NGOs integrated in that response framework, right? But that's to say, the ministry completely supports all of these diversion options. Then you go through your program. The next thing to consider is whether you finish it or not finish it, right? If you finish your program, it would be several things. One, you weren't charged. It's like nothing happened, right? You are free to go. There is no record. All is well. You were charged. The charge is dismissed. You were already before the court and convicted, not yet sentenced. The conviction is thrown out. If you are sentenced, the sentence is suspended. However, if you do not there have to be a mechanism for which we are going to give up, right? So in this child diversion, it's not that, okay, the child missed 2 therapy sessions and that means they are going to arrest him again. They are going to inquire into the reasons as to why the child is not compliant. Sometimes it is not diversion. So when they give an informal warning or a formal warning or a caution, those are all diversion options. An informal warning is where they would speak to a child verbally and say, this is from this behavior. These are the consequences of this behavior if you don't stop, and so on. Right? So they're normally them would have say, you know, I warn him. So they didn't write anything down, but they spoke to you with the authority of a police officer to say that if you continue with this behavior, you can come in conflict with law. That is an informal warning. They won't record that at the station, but they may send a record of it to the child diversion office. And then we have our formal warning, which is basically the same as your informal warning, except that with your formal warning, it is written. And with your formal warning, you take the child to the police station. So with the informal warning, for example, so one of them boy there from Cornwall, and we search the boy on reasonable suspicion, and he has a ratchet knife on him or something, I can give him a warning. Me confiscate the knife, and I say, listen to me, this is illegal possession of an offensive weapon. And if you continue like this, you are going to be charged, and this is the possibility if you are charged, and so on. Right? And then I say, all right, you're free to go. And I did all of that outside of the gate at Cornwall. That is an informal warning, right? I can record it, like I said, for the child diversion office, but normally I wouldn't record that. When it is a formal warning now, I am going to take you to the station. I'm not going to charge you, but I'm taking you to the station so you know so it's a bit more serious. I'm going to call your parents. And I'm going to tell them, say, I have your son at the station or your daughter at the station, and this is what she was doing. And listen, I'm going to warn them. But, and in that case, you would give them a written document that would say that they have been warned, right? And you get the written document because this is where we start to be concerned about the behavior that you're displaying, right? So the final stage before you fully charge somebody would be your caution, right? When your caution is basically the same as a formal warning, except that when you caution, the child accepts responsibility, the child is in need of psychosocial care and support, they are not a child that is in need of care and protection. A child that is in need of care and protection means the child is being abused or neglected, right? That is not just because you're picking bad, don't mean that they're being abused or neglected, right? So a child in need of care and protection would go to the CPFSA. We would not be dealing with them at the police. So if they are assessing a child and they realize that this is a child that is in need of care and protection, they would refer the child to the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. They shouldn't keep that matter, right? The child receive a formal warning before, so you saw earlier when we say what the formal warning was, that it was written. So when you're going to give a police caution, this would have been a stage above your formal warning. So you would want to give a formal warning to this child before you bring it a stage above, right? And finally, they have received no more than 2 police cautions, right? Now they say therefore a diversion offense. When you see that term for a diversion offense, that means an offense can be, as it is now, any offense can be diversion. Like sex with a person under 16, like breaches of the Larceny Act, like I think unlawful wounding is there as well. Yeah. Keep in mind that unlawful wounding is not that, it sounds serious, but it's not that serious. If I stab you with a pencil, that's unlawful wounding. right? So, and we know that I give the child a caution, can't go back and charge them for the same thing I caution them about. The only thing I will say though is that where a child has been, what should I say? Okay, so where a child has been cautioned, they may also be referred to the diversion program, right? So they are going to send them to the ministry to do the assessment and all of that. In all other circumstances, when a child is referred, then there would be a case against them, right? And the police could have revived the case or the court could have revived the case. But in the situation of a caution, the caution dealt with the case, right? So you would only be referring them to the diversion of where you caution them and you send them to the diversion. They do not complete the diversion, you're not going to be able to charge them after that, right? Because you cautioned them already. And that was the purpose of the caution, was to deal with the case. So when the police use one of these diversion options, that is the end of it. So say, for example, somebody in your community come and them say, the police give me paper, say him caution him, but him come back, come arrest him for the same something. Cannot happen, right? That would have been a breach because that would have been double jeopardy. And we don't allow that. It's against our constitution, actually. They have a protection from that, right? Now, finally, the victim, you realize that we weren't talking much about them as we were here, right? Discussing these police-related diversion options. And part of the reason that is the case is because in these cases, the police are making a decision based on their discretion. They're saying that these offenses are so minor and did so little harm that I don't need to interact with the victim and I also don't need to charge this child, right? However, the victim still have a right to know what happened with a matter that affected them. And so if the police use one of these options, even though the victim did not consent or was not there to give their opinion, they must be informed, right, at the end of the day. So if they can be found. Sometimes they can be found, right? But if they can be found, then they must be informed. Okay, I'm going to do a quick activity with you guys. We're starting with this one. Just scrutinize this while I use the bathroom. I'll be back. 3 years, right? 3 years minimum, but it was more than 3, it was 4. So he's eligible, right? 15-year-old joint. No, he is 17. So it end at 17. So as long as you are 17 when you commit the offense, you are eligible. Yes. So a 15-year-old jointly charged in an armed robbery where a knife was allegedly used. Police suggest planning and group involvement. The victim is traumatized. To purchase my TV. The item. If you just buy a random item on the roadside. If you don't have no proof of purchase or anything where you buy, right? Because that's usually what them work. Even if you you know, we're black people, and as much as we live in a majority black country, I have seen things in other countries, right? Where you purchase something. It's actually happened to a friend of mine, actually. You purchase something in the store and you are coming out of the store, but you went into the people them store too black. And so now they think the items that you have, you did not purchase. Making your purchases, you have to be aware that anything that you cannot evidence could be stolen. Right? All right. So, 12-year-old damages a school gate while engaging in pranks with peers. Yeah, nay? Yeah, he's eligible, right? All right. 16-year-old accused of online fraud involving the use of another person's bank card resulting in financial loss. The complainant is strongly opposed to diversion and wants the matter to be prosecuted. You don't think it's eligible? Him eligible, but him not likely. Him eligible because he's 16. The offense, the court would have to divert him, but it could be diverted. But the likelihood of that diversion is low because we know the victim consent is very important, even when it is before the court, right? So they would look at that and considering the kind of redress that the victim wants, the court might take that into consideration, him not getting a diversion, right? All right, last two. 14-year-old involved in an incident where a bottle is thrown in an argument, injuring a bystander. The injury is not life-threatening. Yes. Finally, 15-year-old previously completed diversion 2 years ago with no reoffending. They are now charged with grievous bodily harm arising from a street altercation. The victim is open to a restorative engagement. Exactly. No, because him not reached the 3 years yet. So he's not eligible for diversion, but a victim in this case could still do restorative justice, right? Because as much as he's not eligible for diversion, restorative justice is another alternative measure that you can use for certain kinds of offenses, right? And this kind of offense, well, then again, grievous bodily harm, I don't know if the court would accept that still. But either way, if the victim was so minded, the court would consider it, right? Because the court also trying to clear backlog. So if we're not willing to sort this out outside of the court, we'll accept that, right? So if they could have gone to restorative justice, but he wouldn't be eligible for diversion. All right, so we're finished with diversion. Do we have any questions about it? We're going to talk finally now about gender-based and domestic violence. No, so say for example, it was the police that referred the child to diversion, all decisions would come back to the police. So if the child did not finish the program or is not complying, they report that to the police. If the child complied, they report that to the police. So it depends on who the referral partner was. Right? Okay, so while my laptop is somehow freezing, anyway, we're gonna talk about the domestic and gender-based violence, right? So can someone tell me what gender-based violence is? Can someone tell me what gender-based violence is? Violence against your gender. Not because you are just male or female, but because of what that means in your society. So say, for example, you are a woman and you are not cooking and cleaning. You might be experiencing some violence at home, but that's because women are expected to cook and clean. That's your gender role, right? So when we say violence against you because of your gender, it is more so to do with your gender role and your gender norms that you're expected to perform. If you are a man experiencing gender-based violence, because they experience it, right? It could be because you are a poor breadwinner, and so your wife always broke, and so she always commit violence against you. Or it could be that she does not think that you are a strong man. Say you're weak and jellyback, and she abuses you. Right? That is also gender-based violence. Because it would be you, based violence, that is what we mean. It's violence you experience because of a lack of, conforming to your gender role. And we determine them as a society. So the society that we live in has already determined what our gender roles are. and they treat us in that way, and then we are expected to comply, right? Now, I'm going to say some phrases. Normally, mother, I'm going to get up for this, but you can raise your hand. I'm going to say the phrase, and then I'm going to ask if you agree, disagree, or neutral. When I say the term agree or disagree, you raise your hand for whichever one you agree or disagree with, all right? Okay. A spouse has the right to use violence to discipline their spouse. Agree? All right, I say one, I say agree, disagree? Disagree? Okay. Any neutrals? Any agrees? Oh, that's so progressive in here, man. Well, progressive. Okay. All right. Church-going men do not use violence against their wives. Church-going men do not use violence against their wives. Agree? Disagree? All right. Okay. A woman should not refuse sex with her husband. Agree? Disagree? Neutral? Disagree to an extent? Depends on what the situation is. All right. Clarify your opinion for me.
Well, probably she's not feeling well.
Mm-hmm.
And also, she probably is not in the frame of mind.
Mm-hmm. And you're saying that in that case, she should be okay to refuse.
Yes, with a discussion with her partner.
With a discussion.
That is aware of what is happening and they can deal with the situation.
I see. Okay. You said you were neutral, ma'am?
Yes, darling. My mouth is big. I don't need a mic. Good evening, everyone. Still need it? All right. So I am neutral, and I'll say because in the event that him just box me down, or I'm having an issue based on work, I'm not in the mind frame of it. Yes, we might have a discussion, but then what if he insists and probably wants to force himself on me and then beat me up again to get it? No, I don't believe that.
Okay, so basically you're saying that she should only refuse if there are specific circumstances in which that refusal is reasonable. Okay. I completely disagree with that. I think you can refuse no matter what the circumstances are because of your body. Yeah. It cannot work like that. It's selfish. Mm-hmm. I believe that one, there is no person that has more right to my body than me. Right? And therefore, any access you have to my body is a privilege, not an entitlement. And that means that if I withdraw the privilege, I don't have to explain nothing because I granted the privilege to you, so I can withdraw it. If it is that it was an entitlement, then we could be having conversations about what you are owed and so on. But it is not an entitlement, it is a privilege. And therefore, I can withdraw that privilege at any point. Yes, anymore. And here's what I'll say. Even the most dutiful wife has an unfaithful husband. So, at the end of the day, if you are going to be making your decisions on the basis that you're keeping him at home, you may not even be doing that. Right? So it's better you respect your own body so that when you can go to bed at night, you are comfortable with the decisions that you made. Right? Alright, I'm gonna do what you know why we ask these things, because these are common things when we discuss in our society. Right? All right, so I'm gonna ask two more. Men are inherently violent. Disagree. All right. Some people don't disagree. Right? Because they think that men are generally more aggressive. But we know that everyone is socialized into aggression. Right? All right. Final one. Men are more sexual beings than women. All right. Agree. If you agree, raise your hand. If you disagree, if you're neutral. And I think there's some comments in the online. Yes. You want to read them for me? Yes. Mhm.
The comments versus our disagreeing. Some are saying
Yes, so some persons say, in terms of refusal of sex, they say, to an extent, if she's not well or on her period or tired, and then this other person said the Bible states that a wife is to submit to her husband, and the most dutiful husband can have an unfaithful wife. Disagree. Depends on how you look at it. Was for which one? To the same question. Okay. Any other one? Okay. All right. Well, we are talking about human rights here, right? And if it's one thing that we have in our doctrine as a country, is a separation of church and state, right? So when we are talking about what the law protect you from, it's not going to always be aligned with what your Bible said, because we have a separation of church and state. We also have a right to freedom of religion. So it can't be that one religion run the state, which is why we have a separation of church and state. So I saw a comment there that say, the Bible say a wife is to submit to her husband, right? However, and that's fine. And you can practice that in your home, but you cannot dictate that unto the society, right? So when we are talking about what is allowed in the society, we wouldn't be limiting ourselves to biblical laws, right? Final one was the one with the sex. Men are have more libido, sexual drive than women. Some people agree, some people disagree. Somebody who agree, tell me why you agree. But they not gonna speak. She said a man just has to look at a female and he's aroused. Mm-hmm. Is that the same for everybody? She said that for a man, because she said she agreed that men are more sexual beings, right? And she said for a man, he can just look at a woman and be aroused. And for a woman, she needs more than just to look. She would need to be caressed and to be what else? Loved up, right? In order for her to feel the same way. Do we agree with that? I highly disagree with that. I highly disagree with that. Exactly. So I am completely on his side here, because I remember being in high school, like every other high schooler, and my classmates were just as horny as the boys over Monroe. Just as horny, right? They were very much interested in having sex. But they were also told that women who have sex early with too much people, with this and are disparaged, right? And so you don't discuss your desire to have sex, because that go make you look a certain way, even though you have that desire, right? So I don't believe, and our data does not show, that men are any more sexual than women. And therefore, when we have discussions about sexual violence and rape and those things, and we say, say a man, him have needs. His needs are no different than the woman he raped. They are the exact same needs, right? So in this way, we have to debunk these kinds of myths because they perpetuate the domestic and gender-based violence that we're trying to fight, right? Because if we continue to say things like, oh, I just saw man stay, or I saw woman stay, then we will never address these problems, right? All right, so exactly, right? That's true. That is true, right? All right, so we said gender-based violence is the violence you experience because of your gender, and it's an umbrella term, right? So it speaks to violence against women and girls, intimate partner violence, domestic violence. We separate violence against women and girls, particularly because violence against women and girls have had a long history, right? We would have, in 1970, before 1975, could you vote as a woman? You could have voted? If you're a woman? Before 75? No? Because you did not have universal adult suffrage. 44, my bad. 1944. Right. So you couldn't have voted before that, right? That would have been a form of gender-based violence, right? If you, yes. And you would only have property if you were married because you could not have property as a single woman. So where would I get it from? So technically speaking, you yourself as a woman did not have any rights. You had rights if you were attached to a man. But as an individual, you did not have any rights. That would have been a structural inequality against women. Even now, if you go to the hospital as a woman that is pregnant and you want to have a tubal ligation, you want to tie your tubes, your husband needs to give consent, even though you have bodily autonomy, right? That is a form of structural violence because it should be up to you to determine whether or not you are going to tie your tubes or not. It should be not up to a third party, unless that third party is a doctor that is speaking to you about the medical risks of what you are going to be doing. Somebody else's wishes as to what is going to happen with your body should not be taken into account. So when we say, so let me just say something. It has changed for who? Because as somebody that works with persons living with the HIV, it has not changed. You had a tubal ligation without your husband, and him never gonna consent? That's a brave doctor. Because if you go to a doctor and ask you, because I've had clients recently at the hospital. Okay, I hear you. But again, when we look at these, when we talk about intimate partner violence, that has to do with persons who are in relationships. And then when we talk about domestic violence, that have to do with your household. So anybody that is in the household, it don't have to be in a relationship with them, you don't have to be related to them. As long as they're in the household, it can be domestic violence, right? Okay, so we're going to talk about some types of violence. What is physical violence? When you get licked to your skin, right? But it is also when you experience, when you are threatened, right? So if it is that you are threatened, that is an assault. That is what an assault is. It's a threat. That's why you will see the offense is assault occasioning bodily harm or assault occasioning grievous bodily harm, because the assault is the threat and the bodily harm is the battery. So normally you would have heard assault and battery. That's what that means. The assault was the threat of harm, the battery was the actual harm. So when somebody threatened to harm you, that still fall within the realm of your physical abuses, because that threat is an apprehension of the physical harm to come, right? So that goes into, and it is also an offense, right? So you can report a mere threat even if a person just threatens you, they haven't actually physically done anything to you, you can report that to the police because that in itself is an offense. Right? You also have sexual abuse, which is what? Right. Not just rape, right? It is any act, sexual act that was non-consensual, coerced, forced, that is being used to make the person feel unsafe, to force the person into other activities, or to make the person get some benefit that they're entitled to, right? All those things are sexual abuse, where the sex, whatever sexual act is happening without consent or with coercion. Keep in mind, coercion is abuse. If someone refuses sex in the same situation where I described before, somebody refuse the sex and you will not allow them to refuse peacefully, you keep pushing and pushing and pushing, even if you do not hold them down to rape them, you raped them because they did not consent. And you were reckless as to whether or not they consented. Because them did already say, me no want to go forward. And you would not take no for an answer. Right? You also have your emotional and verbal abuse. What do we think that means? Hurt your feelings, right? Somebody, but it's not just a one isolated incident, right? It would be a period, a continuous period. But it is mistreatment to make you feel belittled, to make you feel less than, right? So when they're arguing with you, they don't argue with you in a goal to solve the problem. Them say, oh, don't girl, me not understand why. And they say things to make you feel less than yourself, right? I will say, as an attorney, usually because the women are getting physical abuse, the men are usually the ones that come with these complaints because the women lead with the physical abuse, right? They're like, yeah, him beat me up and so on. So those small things that when he's insulting her and whatever, she don't bother bring that up. But for the men, this is a lot of the abuse they experience. It is the emotional and the verbal abuse. And so that is what they will bring, right? We also have the psychological abuse. What do we think that is? And it's different from verbal abuse. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, all right, so I'll tell you this one. So this one is there for you to feel on, what should I say, off kilter, right? You're not sure if you're ever making the right decision. So for example, we're here in this session today. What's your name, sir? Whitcliffe? All right, so that's your last name? All right, so Mr. Roberts and Mrs. Roberts, to the public, they are happily married, right? Mr. Roberts come to my session today, and Mrs. Roberts calls him because she wants to make sure that he is where he said he was supposed to be. So Mr. Roberts' house is 20 minutes away from here, and she timed the 20 minutes when him left up at the yard, and she called him in at the 20 minutes, and she said, you reach where you going now? And him said, yeah, man, me just a drive in at the parking lot, and so on. And then she said, so how this session, how long this session you gonna be? And Mr. Roberts said, you know, say, them we just talk about, you know, she said, send me a picture of the agenda. So she can see when it starts and when it ends. And then she sees on the agenda, say lunchtime at 1 o'clock. So 1 o'clock she called on video call. Right? Because she wants to see the background. Right? To make sure say inside a Birchell Baptist Church him there. Right? Or alternatively, come check. She say, oh, where are you? Mama come drop off something where she never did need to drop off until, right? Just to make sure, say, he's where he said he was. Well, back when I was a child, what them would do is them call the house phone, because you did supposed to say home. Right? They say you are at home. So me no bother call your cell phone. I call the house phone, because you can only answer the house phone if you're there home. Right? All right. Or we have another situation where you're sitting here and I told you all in respect of this session to put your phone on silent. And when you check the phone at lunchtime, there are 17 missed calls on the phone. And you know say you can't bother go home this evening. Because if you go home this evening, a problem, right? Those things are a part of your psychological abuse. This person is constantly checking on you, and they're not stalking you because of your partner, but the constant following up and checking up, you feel off kilter, like you might at any point do something wrong, right? Or in the same realm of the psychological abuse, the ladies that you would have been spending every Friday and Saturday evening with doing your community things and your whatever, him start fear to say, you know, say that Miss Donna they do, me don't like her. And him give you all of the reasons why him not like Miss Donna. Miss Donna your best friend, you know. And him give you all of the reasons why him not like Miss Donna. And him tell you how you not fit trust Miss Donna. Because she dangerous to you. And she a try to sabotage with relationship. And she a try to come between we. And she jealous, say you're happy. But Miss Donna just a tell her, say, it look like the man a abuse you. Eh? Him not approve of that. So eventually, you Miss Donna fall out. And when the actual abuse start now, you not have no Miss Donna to talk to. Right? Because he would have isolated you from those friends. But we can do it from the man's side too. Because the man usually did it. And every Friday them out there play football with the boys them. And from him and this girl there, no football can play. Right? Because he need to be home with his girlfriend. Right? And that would separate him from those friends as well. So it's the isolation, the following up. You feel like you're being stalked by someone who that's supposed to care about you. That is the psychological abuse. And finally, we have the financial abuse. And when we talk about financial abuse, this has to do with controlling the finances to maintain a certain level of power, to coerce the other person to do things in the relationship. Now, keep in mind, it does not have to be the breadwinner that is financially abusing, right? It is the person who have the most power in the relationship. Sometimes that is not the breadwinner, right? That person who have the strongest personality. So you will have a nice, hardworking is where you are using the money, the finances, to control the other person, right? It can also be where you steal from the other person, right? So especially if it's an elderly person and they were sending money to care for that person, you take that money from them. That would also be a financial abuse, right? Okay, so normally I would do this as a activity, but I really gotta go. So I'm trying to move real fast, right? So a man forces a woman to give him oral sex. This would be grievous sexual assault. Sexual abuse, yes. So I'm telling you what the actual offense is. So this would have been grievous sexual assault because it was a penetration of the mouth and it was forced, right? Grievous sexual assault. 45-year-old woman forces a 13-year-old boy to have intercourse with her. Sex with a person under the age of 16, right? A man uses a broomstick to vaginally penetrate a woman against her will. Okay, so grievous sexual assault is this. You use something other than a penis to penetrate the mouth, the vagina, or the anus. Well, no, you use the penis for the mouth. So you use something other than a penis for the vagina or the anus, or the penis or other objects for the mouth. It is grievous sexual assault. If it is the forced penetration of the vagina, it is rape. If it is sex with any person under the age of 16, it is sex with a person under the age of 16. Right? So this one here would be grievous sexual assault again, because we use an object other than the penis to penetrate a vagina. 15-year-old boy and his 14-year-old girlfriend, sex with a person under the age of 16. And it would be both of them that would be implicated in that section. Finally, 15-year-old boy, 19-year-old neighbor. You might look at this and think it is ambiguous. It's not ambiguous. It's rape. Even though he's a minor, he forced the sexual activity. And that would be rape because he is at the age of criminal responsibility, right? So he would have been charged with rape. No? Yes. because 16 is the age of consent, right? But 12 is the age of criminal responsibility, right? So you chose to do a criminal action that may have engaged consent, but not your consent, because you consented because you forced the action, right? So we have our Domestic Violence Act, and that applies to when you are in the household, right? The only persons that it applies to that do not live in the same household are persons that are in a visiting relationship. To be in a visiting relationship, you must be a man and a woman. You are living apart. You are in a relationship, a romantic, intimate partner relationship. And the court will look at things like how much time you spend together, where you go when you spend that time together, what you are doing when you spend that time together, if you have any children together, and those kinds of matters. Once they determine that you are in a visiting relationship, you can also get orders under the Domestic Violence Act, right? But like I said, anybody that live in the same household, so you and your brother abuse you, you can get an order against him. You're an elderly person and it's the daughter that's your caretaker, you can get an order against her. Whoever live in the house with you, you can get an order against them. Under the Domestic Violence Act, we have two protective measures. We have the protection orders and the occupation orders. Your protection orders go with the person. So the protection order will say, stay away from Jade Williams. Don't go to Jade Williams' house. Don't go to Jade Williams' school. Do not lay wait and watch and harass Jade Williams. Don't call Jade Williams' phone excessively, not do this, not do that to me, right? And it will follow me where I go. If I get an occupation order, say I get an occupation order for this premises here, it would say, stay away from Birchell Baptist Church. That is at -- Church Street, Montego Bay, for the period of the order. So the occupation order is dealing with the premises. A protection order can also keep you away from a premises, right? Because if I say, stay away from my home, in a part of the protection order, it would keep you away from my home. However, the occupation order is there specifically for the premises, right? The occupation order can be granted regardless of if the person it's being granted against is the owner of the property. So I am the one that signed the lease, or it is my home, it is my property, but I am abusing you, who is also a member of this household. You can get an order against me for me to come out of my place for the duration of the order, right? It is there to ensure that those who are more vulnerable, like somebody that's being abused in their own home, would be able to get the redress that they need, right? So obviously, all of these protective orders are temporary. And when you get this occupation order, the court would likely be looking into ways for you to come out of this place. But in order for you to do that, the abuser can't stay there with you, right? Because you wouldn't be able to move forward. So they give you the occupation order. So your protection order, it can protect you from watching, tormenting, lay waiting, persistent phone calls, abusive language, harassment, ill treatment, damage to property. And when you make an application for this order, you can simultaneously apply for restitution. So say, for example, in the incident that brought you to the court to apply for a protection order, this person smash up your laptop and broke up your phone and throw things through your window and all of that. You will now bring to the court the receipt, them for all of them something there, for the person to pay restitution for the destruction of that property, right? And they can make that order at the same time. If you have children with this person, and there will now need to be discussion about care and control and custody of the child and maintenance, the court can hear all of that in the one application. So you're going to apply for the protection order, same time you apply for the custody, same time you apply for the maintenance, same time you apply for the restitution, and the same court will hear everything, right? So it would be one application that you make. And you can also apply for an occupation order at the same time, right? So all of this can be decided in the one hearing. Now, you get the protection order if someone has used or threatened to use. Keyword threaten, right? So has used or threatened to use violence against you, you can get the orders, right? Now, in some situations, if you don't get Normally, when you go to get an order from the court, you know you go and you make your application and the clerk assists you to fill out your affidavit and your claim form and they file it and they give you a summons and you serve the summons on the person and then the person show up to court and then you discuss the matter with the judge, right? Sometimes you can't wait for all of that because if you don't get an order today, this abuser will kill you in the next 2 days, right? So in that case, you wouldn't wait on all of that process. You would get an ex parte order. Ex parte mean the other person is not present. The court is only hearing one side, right? Because you are in such danger, that is why you're applying for an ex parte order. So the ex parte order would have been granted on the same day that you go to the court. And that means that if the abuser come tonight, you can always call the police and say, I have an order against this man, I need to come for him. Because they can come without a warrant, right? And this person would not be able to abuse you in the period until we go back to court. Yes. All right, so here's what I'll say. I understand what you're saying. Here's what I'll say. Self-defense. Self-defense is very difficult to prove, right? Very difficult to prove, especially when you are in a situation where you are standing strong and another party is unconscious. That don't indicate that you were self-defending. That indicate that you were beating them. That don't make a difference. But remember, but you weren't here earlier when we talk about the trespass to the, so you have a duty of care, even to a trespasser, right? So what I will say, you must always try to defend yourself. If you feel like you're in danger, of course you try to defend yourself. But what I will say is never take an action in defense of yourself and believe while you are taking it that you will succeed on a self-defense defense. Never do that. Whatever you plan to do, just have it in your mind, say, whatever the consequences will be, I'm willing to deal with that. Because you are never certain that you will succeed on self-defense. It's very hard to succeed on self-defense because they will start talking about your other options. Him coming at the house and him did seem like him going to attack you. Why didn't you leave? Is it that you could not have left? Is it that there was no room, you could have locked the door? Is it your only response that you had? That is what self-defense is, you know. Self-defense is, this was the only option I had in order to preserve my life or the lives of other vulnerable people around me. If that was not the reason, if that was not what happened, it's not self-defense. Eh? They have to be careful. All right. Now, if they violate the protection order, there are some new fines and terms of imprisonment. So if they violate the protection order, the new fine is $1 million. The new term of imprisonment is 1 year. And they can have both the fine and imprisonment, right? It used to be $10,000 and 6 months. So this was a good change from the 2023 amendment, right? When these orders are breached, the police now have cause, when we're talking about the reasonable suspicions and so on, this is one of the reasons for the police to arrest a person without a warrant. They have a protection order against them and they have breached that order. Of course, if you don't have a copy of the order, it's going to be hard for them to enforce an order they cannot see. So when you go to the court and you apply for the order and it is granted, it's not printed the same day. This is a parish court, let's be realistic. But you must go back for it. You cannot just rely on the fact that an order was granted. You need to have a copy of the order for yourself so that if there is any need to bring that order to the police, you have evidence that there's an order against this person, right? Okay, so... Okay, Gina and Malcolm are married. Gina physically and sexually abuses Malcolm. What protections can she get? Can he get? under the Domestic Violence Act. We just talked about him. Protection order, right? All right, but they are married couples, so maybe an occupation order as well because they probably live together, right? Ashley and Thomas are a married couple. Thomas has forced Ashley to have sex with him on several occasions, did not leave any sign of physical injury. Can Ashley do anything? Ashley and Thomas are a married couple. Thomas has forced Ashley to have sex with him on several occasions, but has never left any sign of physical injury. What protections can Ashley seek? None, because Ashley and Thomas are married. And the law say if you're not separated, if there wasn't already an order against, if you are not in the process of divorce, if him to have a STI and never tell you, it is not rape. Right? So there is no action to take here. Greg and Bruce are dating. Greg is verbally, physically, psychologically abusing Bruce. What protections can they get? Can they? They don't live together. That's not said there. Can they have a protection order? No, because we said a visiting relationship is what? A visiting relationship is what? I don't want to stay until 4 o'clock, you know? May I try for done for 3:30? No, no, want for done. But what was the first thing I said? It's between a man and a woman. That's the first thing I said. So if it is a visiting relationship, it is between a man and a woman. So they would not be able to get the protection. It would be different if they lived in the same household. Then the relationship wouldn't matter because you're living at the same household. But they don't. So it would have to be between a man and a woman. Right? All right. Faye, 90-year-old woman who is being financially, physically, and verbally abused by her daughter. What protections can she get? She can get her protection order and her occupation order, right? Because as long as they are living together, which is likely, she would be able to get both of them, right? Elder abuse is part of the abuses under your domestic violence, right? All right, so Kim is in a visiting relationship and is extremely verbally, has been facing extreme verbal and physical abuse for months. Her partner started abusing her child. She wants protection immediately. She feels that delay could bring further harm. The protection order, right? But remember the ex parte order, right? And so we say all of these things because as justices, lay magistrates, people ever come to know with them problems, right? And you just have to advise them based on what you know. So even in situations like these, they come to you, they tell you something like this, you can say, yeah, man, you can go right now. It won't take days. It can happen today. You just need to give them the information, right? All right. So I could say more, but I'm going to end it here. I am going to ask, okay, so this is our information. You all have pamphlets in your folders that would have much of this, except for this, this is my CUG, right? So if you wanted to reach me, that would be my CUG, so you can take that down. A card? A card? No, I don't. I don't. So unless you have any more questions, once you take this down, yeah, man, that's fine. Once you take this down, I will bring up the post test. So that will be the same questions you did this morning. But now you should get all of them right because I have spent all day teaching you the material. So I am going to give you the post test and the evaluation. And the evaluation is just about the session. I think that's like 5 questions. Right? And then we will be finished.
Hello? Hello?
Can we have a process now? We complete that.
Take a picture. On the
For those JP who are not in attendance, how can they get one of those folder?
Anyone else need us to? Completed the post test, you can complete the evaluation. Yep. The evaluation.
How can JP that are not on spot access one of those folder with the documents? How can JP who are using Zoom access one of those folders with the presentations?
My dear friend, treasurer, Wycliffe Robert. We can't scan it, but me not know how to come up with it. I mean, do it all work. I don't know if the internet not working. That's what I'm saying because the camera say I have both. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. One, okay. Yeah, come up. And then, this part, and then come out back. Come out back outside and go back for the again. All right, go back. Yeah. That's it. Okay, come on.
They can start going from the top. Yeah. If it is here, you have three that's right here. Yeah. So I pull that to work. One of the options to fit. Can QR code. That is a QR. So anywhere stuff like that. You can use that thing. No, comes up, and you that and just click. It will open it. So you found it. So you just put it on the focus it right there. You see? There. And then you just open it. Oh, you don't have no data.
Yeah, he has to do.
To the condo. I have to be like Google Drive. I can say, yeah, you can
All right, colleagues, we're wrapping up. All right, so we have another person who is here with us. She'll be sharing some information with us for 5 minutes. Her name is, well, I call her Gleason, and Antoinette Burkett. Jesus. Yes. Give me my name again. Kamok. Antoinette Burkett Kamok. If you see, check within your groups, you will see some of us, we would have sent to you what is known as Kings and Queens March to Destiny 2026, right? She is one of the promoters, and she's the convener. It is financial freedom, stewardship, and empowerment conference that is going to be held this weekend. It is something that the lay magistrates of St. James has endorsed. And we're asking you to promote it within your groups and your communities. I know I allow her to speak more on it. Well.
Thank you, Mr. Hitchman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Antoinette Burkett Kamok, and it's an honor to be with you here this evening. This is the birthing of a vision I have had for a long time. So it's being hosted actually by my husband and myself. And it was born out of the fact that Hurricane Melissa passed and so many persons were having financial struggles, right? And I'm not saying that I'm okay, but I'm just saying that there were so many people who had lost homes and they'd lost everything, and they realized that they didn't even have a saving. There was nothing put away. And I've been listening to persons, and we're talking now about Mobe being sold off, the diaspora buying up all the land. People want houses, can't get houses. People want to send their children to good schools, they can't do it. And it had me thinking that as Jamaicans, especially at this pivotal point, because we all sense that Jamaica is onto something. We're hearing about perhaps the discovery of oil, and we're hearing about natural elements in the earth being discovered. And we're looking at it and say, do we want it to pass us by? I know that we don't want it to pass us by. But we can prepare ourselves for what is coming, and better yet, we can even prepare our children much better than where many of us started. And so if we can understand really well how to steward even the little bit that we have, we can set ourselves up for our generations to move ahead and be better off. So that is really the foundation on which this event was planned. We're having speakers like Jermaine McDonald. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, from Learn, Grow, Invest. He's coming in from Kingston, and he's going to be sharing keys on developing financial freedom. He also told me that there are some novel things that he's going to be sharing that he has never shared yet. He has also been retained by Sagicor. He does a lot of their trainings with employees. So this guy is legit. And we really want to start knowing how to adequately make whatever we have grow. So we may not inherit that much of it, but I'm telling you, if we know certain things now, our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren will be better positioned to take hold of Jamaica land we love. Makes decisions for the policies of the land. Isn't that true, ladies and gentlemen? Yeah. So who owns the land? They have that kind of power. And if we don't know what we're doing, we're going to leave a place that is open game, and our children would not have been better off because of our best decisions. We're also going to be having Dr. Moshe Gurian. He is a Hebrew scholar. I'm a Christian, but this is not a church event. He's a Hebrew scholar, and he'll be talking about what does it mean when God said, be fruitful and multiply. How do we take over the truth? So we want to teach our children how to take over and to take over the right way. So these are the main points of the conference. Is starting at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning, and it's continuing until 4 p.m. on Saturday. And the fee, we're not really charging. There's only a registration amount of $1,200 that we're asking for. So it's really nothing much. We're making it so reasonable because we want all of mobility here. So please invite those around you, and it will be great for you to come too. Right? We want you guys to come because we have to learn from your wisdom. We want to network. We want to meet all of these people. You guys have so much to share with us, and we don't want to know that we haven't given you a space to share your bits of wisdom with us. All right, so thank you so very much for listening. 9 o'clock, Family Church on the Rock. They've just covered the arena. It's called the Life Arena. So we'll be there 9 to 4 o'clock, and we're going to be having an amazing time. Thank you so much for your attention, and God bless you. I have tickets if anybody's interested, and you can also click on the link. I have a few flyers here. Anybody want a flyer? Yes, I have some more in the car. I'll go get them and take them up. So, thank you so much, Mr. Hickman.
Miss Williams, we are. Yes.
Stand in the middle.
Sit down. Stand up.
Oh.
You represented Jamaicans for Justice, and we are happy that you guys have, well, the organization has seen the need to share information, valid information that we need as just JPs, Justices of the Peace, that will continue to equip us to be better able to manage our areas. You have taken the time to be here. Well, as a matter of fact, I think you're the one going to right around the island,
Yes.
right, to do the work. And we are extremely happy, and we wish you all the best in the journey. On behalf of the Lay Magistrates Association of St. James, the St. James chapter, we want to give you this as a token of our appreciation and wish you well as you travel back to Kingston. God bless you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jay.
I'm from St. James, so yes, I'm actually going to stop by my mother before I go up. She's by Westgate right now. I'm gonna go and say hello before I go up. So I was happy to share this time with my countrymen, and hopefully we will be back for more engagement.
Definitely.
All right.
All right. All right, colleagues, JP's all. It's another session that another part of the series of Empowerment for the Journey that we have embarked on. We're finished for today. So we want you to keep in touch with us, keep in touch with your zone leaders, keep in touch with your parish associations, and continue to serve as men and women of substance. All right? Yes. May I invite somebody just to offer a word of prayer as we close? Oh, we're going to do the national anthem. Yes. And then we do a group picture. Yes. May I invite you to stand, please? Go with God. I'd like you to step forward so we can do a picture. Please. Group picture.